Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be around the globe. And happy International Women's Day. My name is Jennifer Williams, and I'm the Director of Global Inclusion at Turner. Well, that was before the announcement. I think the artist known as Prince said is the company formerly known as, right? Whatever our name is, we are delighted to host the powerful women of WarnerMedia. When we began thinking about what we would do for International Women's Day and what powerful women we could get in, we thought to ourselves, why do we want to go outside of the walls? Why don't we just look within our own ranks? And then we thought, let's think bigger. Let's actually go across WarnerMedia and let's introduce the whole of the organization to some really powerful women who are doing some really phenomenal things in the media and entertainment industry. So I am delighted, right, for us to be able to share those with you. Now, for many of you who remember last summer, WarnerMedia came out with an inclusion policy that talked about, we put a stake in the ground that said that we were going to commit to increasing the number of diverse storytellers, both in front of and behind the camera. That coupled with each of our own individual companies, focus around women and people of color in leadership, those two, I think, combined together will create an absolutely phenomenal organization to be reckoned with out in the marketplace. And so we brought together women from HBO and Warner Brothers and Otter and Turner. Okay, that was before the announcement, right? WarnerMedia Entertainment and Warner News and Sports and Warner Brothers and Warner Affiliates and Ad Sales Group, right? A mouthful, but wonderful combination, who will talk to you today about how women are faring. Not only faring, but impacting and advancing in the media and entertainment industry. And so with that, I want to actually introduce you to our panelists. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about a very long bio. I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot, and then they're going to launch right into a personal story. So in LA, in our Warner Brothers studios, representing in front of the camera is Aija Mayrock with Otter Media. Aija is not only an actress, but she is also an author and an activist with about 90,000 followers that she is influencing around the globe. She is a new face there and represents a new generation of viewers. We're delighted to have her. Very powerful. Also joined there in Warner Brothers, in the Warner Brothers studio, is Nkechi Carroll. She's a new face at Warner Brothers. Her show, if you've not seen it, new on the network, is called All American. What we love about Nkechi's background, in addition to the great things she's done there at other places, is that though she's born in the U.S., she grew up in Africa and then in the U.K. and traveled the globe. And a lot of that influences her storytelling. Then we hop across the pond, as they say, over to London. And there we see the one and only Bernadette Caulfield from HBO. If you don't know that name, you know her programming. She is the executive producer of Game of Thrones, a global sensation, right, with viewers all around the world. And if you didn't see it, they have a trailer out on WarnerMedia right now of the 8th season coming up. So we're delighted to have her. And then in New York, certainly last but not least, who represents the corporate leadership is Puja Vohra. She is the executive vice president of marketing and digital for truTV. What I love about Puja's background, in addition to her being a great leader, is she is Indian-born, immigrated to the U.S., and then rose right through the media and entertainment industry to lead the marketing and digital organizations at truTV. And that influences, you'll hear her talk about how that influences not only her leadership, but the way she markets that channel. And then certainly lastly, but not least, is our moderator. Veteran international correspondent Erin Burnett, now anchor of Erin Burnett Out Front, will be leading these women in a powerful conversation about, again, how are women faring, impacting and advancing in the media and entertainment industry. Before I turn it over to Erin, what I do want to say, for those of you who find that you've got questions you want to share with the panel, if you will go to Slido.com, and then once you go to Slido, you can go in and enter in your question and then hit enter and do #power first in order to submit your questions. And Beth Superfin there in New York will capture those, and she'll get those over to Erin. So without further ado, I give you the powerful women of WarnerMedia, and I'll turn it over to you, Erin.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thanks to all of you. We've got a lot of Team Puja here in New York. All right. Look, this is really exciting. When I was asked to do this, I think one of the things that I always learn, and whatever the name of our company might be, is how many amazing people there are that work at this company and do so many different things. Because you don't realize, because our company is so big and has so many different units that often operate very independently of another, you don't realize how many amazing people there are, male and female, but how many women executives we have. And that you don't always see people's names, you don't always know what people are doing. So I find this to be so exciting to learn about our colleagues that we work with. And all of you have done such amazing things. I don't know how anyone's accomplished all the things that everyone here has done. Never mind, Aija, that I'm not even going to tell anyone how old you are, but let's just put it this way. You're younger than anybody. And there's a lot of young people watching. So, okay. Puja, since you're with me, let me start with you. truTV, obviously, is where you are now. But I just wanted to give each person a chance to talk about, in whatever you would identify, what are the couple most important moments in your career or your life that led you to be where you are right now professionally?
Great. Thanks, Erin. And first, I want to say, as the least accomplished person on this panel, with all of you guys, I mean, it is. I'm so excited to just be here. And I was, kind of reading up some stuff, and I happened to see one of Aija's videos, the one that you did in Seattle. I mean, I had tears. It was just, everybody should just watch some of the work that Aija has done. We all, of course, watch everything else that the other panelists have done, but I just thought it was so stunning. And I want you to come to my daughter's school. And it was so, I had such a big moment. So thank you so much. I mean, that took insane amounts of courage, and it's just beyond. And so I would say, I think some of you know, and thank you for my colleagues, for the folks who are here, and all the men in the room as well. Thank you, John and Raymond and Carl. Thanks for being here. I'm sorry I don't know your name, but I know. Why is it always that it's women talking to women about women issues is my first question, but we can discuss that another time. Some of you know I'm an immigrant. I moved here to the US from India when I was 30. It took me a really, really long time to find work. I had probably about, 48, 50 interviews before I got my first job in media. And again, an Indian woman trying to break into marketing is not something that is common. And I'm sure when people, would interview me or talk to me or meet me, and I had done good stuff before. I have an MBA. I worked at MTV in India. I was one of their first employees. I was the first employee for Seagram India. So I wasn't unqualified, but I get it. It's hard, to look at a person who doesn't look like you and say, what the heck is a Puja? Like, do you even speak English? Like, who are you? I get that. So I think that was one of the most, I would say, transformative moments for me, because it took me 4 years to get my first job. I came here when I was about 28, and I had already done a bunch of stuff in India. But I came here because I wanted to be at the center of the media universe. I wanted to work I was in MTV, and I wanted to work in, Viacom, MTV in the US, and I kind of got on a plane. I didn't really know anybody. I didn't really have friends or family. I was illegal for a long time. I biked everywhere. I had $1,000 in my bank so that if I ever got hit when I was on a bike, I could just fly back to India because I didn't have insurance. So you kind of make it happen, you make it work. And my dad would be like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? Just come back. You have work in India, you've got a really good career lined up, but I really wanted to make it work here. So I think that's been one crucial piece. I think just the power of, and I don't know what it was, I just did not want to give up. I felt I was a failure if I went back to India. And I've gone back since. I've gone back. I worked there for a couple of years, but I came right back. And I think the second thing that is really important is the power of sponsors. I don't want to call them mentors, because often mentors cannot do for you what sponsors can do for you. And sponsors are people who are usually senior to you, could be a man or a woman, somebody who believes in you and who almost is an agent for your change, who will try and move you around, who will do things for you. And I've been really lucky. Jerry Laborn was somebody I worked with at Oxygen. Lauren Zelaznik and Jason Klarman at NBC. I was at Bravo for a few years. And then here, really, I would say David Levy, whom I'm going to miss so much because he was such a champion for women. Chris Lynn, my boss, and Janet Sheskin, who's our head of HR. So I just think you need hard work, you need luck, but you need people who believe in you and who will put you at the table, or who will put you in the room, or who will give you the opportunity. So.
Well, that's an amazing story. And so many issues touched upon there. Immigration, health policy, everything. You have it all. Everything. Nkechi, let me go to you next. Your background is fascinating, and I saw it. I was particularly personally fascinated because I started out in business and then business journalism. So I see Nkechi, who does all these amazing things and is producing a show called the All American Series and working at CW, and all of a sudden she's done Rosewood when she was at Fox. Like, it's incredible. And then I look at your background, and it's like prior to her TV writing career, Nkechi worked for the Federal Reserve.
Yes, I saw that.
Because that's what I'm career about. Right. Where her responsibilities included managing the reserve position for the U.S. banking system and analyzing the impact of monetary policy.
I think somebody should unmute.
I don't know where that is, but it's men, so be quiet. Domestic markets, all of which she did while writing and producing plays in New York. So, Nkechi, that is an amazing background and an amazing path. So I thought to myself, what got her to go from that to where she is now and achieve at such a level? So how would you answer that question?
Oh boy. Well, the short answer is, I'm Nigerian and I have Nigerian parents, and so failure wasn't an option. But I knew pretty much from probably about 13, 14 that I wanted to be a writer. I used to read Harlequin romance novels. I'm a huge junk romance novel fan. And I wrote my first one when I was 13 that only I read, and I still have. But I still remember going in to my mom's room and telling her, I figured it out. I want to write. That's what I want to do. And to this day, and I'm significantly older, I don't think I've ever seen her laugh that hard. And so I was like, oh, okay, good talk. Back to economics. And so, it was sort of like your career options were doctor, banker, lawyer. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to do medicine. I don't want to do law, so banker it is. And I actually had a genuine love for economics as well. And so that's what I studied in college, but I couldn't shake this love I had for literature and writing. And so I was like, I can do both, because who needs to sleep? And so that's what I did the whole time I was in college in Philly studying economics and French. I would write plays and put up plays wherever I could and perform. And when I got offered a job by the Federal Reserve, I was like, okay, if I work in New York, I can still do theater while also working at the Fed, because again, who needs sleep? I was 21. I was like, yeah, I could go for 24 hours. And that's literally what I did. I would go to the Fed. I'd be at the trading desk by 6:30, 7 in the morning. We would trade in the morning. In the afternoon, we'd be doing our economic analysis and corresponding with DC. And then I would leave at 5:30 and go to the nearest black box theater where we were putting up whatever play we were putting up. And some days I'd make it home and go to sleep and then go back to work. And some days I would not. And I would shower in the gym and go right back down to the trading desk. And that was the hustle in my early 20s. And then 9/11 happened. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York is downtown. It's right by the World Trade Center. And there's nothing like being faced with, oh my God, I'm going to die and not make it home today, to sort of shake you into pick one. Just pick a career, pick what the dream is, and go for it, because you may not get that shot again. And so that's what I did after surviving 9/11 and returning to work at the Federal Reserve and just sort of putting everything in perspective. My poor husband, I literally walked into our house. We'd maybe been married 6 months, and I was like, I think we need to move to LA, today. I really want to give this writing thing a try. And God bless him, he's a teacher. He said I could teach anywhere, and we did. We packed up, and I resigned from the Federal Reserve and moved to LA to pursue, no idea what I was going to do, no anything. I was like, I've saved money, this is going to be great. And then I got to LA and I was like, oh my God, it's just as expensive as New York. And I don't do the starving artist thing really well, which is good to know about yourself. And at which point I called the Federal Reserve and I was like, okay, so that whole quitting thing, I was kidding. Can I work out of our LA office? I'll cover Asia for you on sort of a consultant basis while I try and get this writing career off the ground. And they let me do it. Of course, consulting became full-time in like 2 days. But with a lot of caffeine, I just kept shooting short films on weekends and kept writing, and eventually the right script landed with the right person, which was Hart Hansen, who was hiring writers for the Bone spinoff at the time. And he saw something in me, and I'd never been in a writer's room. I'd only ever been on set as an extra, because that was how I was learning, was just sort of taking extra work and being on set. And he hired me, and so I quit my job at the Federal Reserve on a Friday and started on the Fox lot on a Monday, and it's been 8 years.
Wow.
Well, Aija, since you're next to Nkechi, let me talk about you next. When Nkechi talks about people being 21 and what you can do, I don't think you're even quite there yet. You are the one with the energy and the power of the future of this group. And what I find incredible is you know, Puja's talking about some of your work, and people should watch. I mean, you have, I don't know how someone, I'm now at an age where I think about, wow, what your parents must have done right to have you become so stunning and incredible. So tell us a little bit about you, why you decided to take on the issue of bullying, which is something that Aija has done with such great passion. She's written a book, Survival Guide to Bullying, and some of these videos that she has done, as Puja mentioned, you must watch. But Aija, tell us about you and how this became an issue that you have been able to lead at the level you are doing at the age you are.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Puja for your very, very kind words, and thank all of the women here. I look at all of you as an example of what is possible, and thank you for allowing me to be here and all of that. When I was 8 years old, I began getting bullied. At the time, I had a lisp and a stutter, and every day I would come to school and people would tell me to kill myself and that my life was worth nothing. And that went on for 8 years. And so I actually stopped speaking because I think I was afraid of the power of my voice. I think I was afraid of being bullied for the way I spoke. And when I stopped speaking, I turned to writing. And I used writing as a way to deal with all of the emotions and everything that I was going through. And at the same time, I saw that there were so many young people around the world that were suffering with bullying, that were committing suicide. And I wanted to show them that there was hope and that they could survive. And so I wrote my book, The Survival Guide to Bullying. I was 16, and I was declined by every single publisher because they said, you're 16, you don't know anything, what are you doing writing this book? And I was like, that's the point. I'm 16, I know what other 16-year-olds are going through. So I self-published it, and then 1 month later, my publisher, Scholastic, gave me a shot and published the book. And then very quickly, countries all around the world started buying it, and it became an international bestseller. And I went on tour, and I worked with and spoke to and performed spoken word, which is a big part of my work, for over 4 million people. And when I did that, I realized the power that words had, because for my whole life, I had only seen the negative aspects of words affecting me and affecting people in my school and all around the world. But then suddenly I saw the ability to use words for good. And just to go back a few steps, before I wrote the book, I wrote a screenplay about suicide that was made into a short film and won the Santa Barbara Film Festival. And when I did that, I saw that I was the only girl there. I was the only woman. And I didn't even know that that was a possible career path for women to be behind the camera at all, or to be, or to have roles that had a lot of meat to it, and weren't only seen through the male gaze. And so all of those experiences together really inspired me to continue trying to develop my voice and find a way to communicate with young people and hopefully inspire them to stand up, to speak out, and to tell stories that could change the culture.
All right, Bernadette. Obviously, coming to us from London. Bernadette is, as Jennifer mentioned, was the executive producer of Game of Thrones, so she knows all the secrets for this season. And that's why we have you here, to get that. No, I'm just kidding. In the past, she has done so many other things, and I just go through a few of the shows that some of you may have heard of: The X-Files, Big Love, on and on. So she has won every award there is to win and produced every critically acclaimed and mass enjoyed show there is to produce. So tell us about, Bernadette, how you got to where you got to. People look at you and they say, okay, wow, you have executive produced the most popular, most successful series ever. And they say, wow, how did you ever get to that point? How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, I think there's one thing that's in common with all of us that some of us have said already, that it's a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck, and to be surrounded by various people who have helped us along the way. I started out in theater, actually, up in Rochester, New York. My future sister-in-law came in and she goes, oh, I turned down this job today. You might want it. It's as a stage manager. And I never even thought of doing that other than dancing around my parents' living room and stuff. And so I went, oh, I'll go try that. And I got hooked. I love that you work 24/7. You didn't get paid a dime. And but I just love the camaraderie. And I just love the camaraderie of it all, and to be with a team of people that created something that somebody writes on a page that you help bring to life. And so I started doing that, and then a film came to town, the circus came to town, and the production manager was from Los Angeles, and he said, hey, you're great if you want to come with me. You know, if you ever make it to LA, come and look me up. So of course, another friend and I, if I move, you move. We moved out to LA, and it was a lot cheaper than New York, and nicer to start there than New York City because of the nice hot sun. And so we moved out there, and he had just taken a movie in Brazil, so I was completely in LA, not having my major contact. But eventually he came back, and I started working with him. And I think my first show was like $200 a week, and we worked crazy hours. And he just thought that I was great, and that meant the world to me. And we worked together on several films, and then eventually I went on to Movies of the Week and other things. And it is about, you know, a lot of us work very hard, and I was so fortunate to get Game of Thrones and X-Files and things like that. So sometimes I get a little angry when people look at somebody's resume and says, well, this person can't come on to Game of Thrones, they haven't, and it's like, well, there are no other shows like that, and it's about hard work, and my parents were always their own bosses, and I knew I never really wanted to work for somebody at a 9-to-5 job, and they always told me I could do whatever I wanted to do, and they supported me when they found out I wanted to move to Hollywood. It was like, okay, and I'm sure they were laughing as hard as your mom. But outside they didn't, and I just always had that feeling that I could do whatever I wanted, and I could do anything, and I never felt pigeonholed at all. And it was about a lot of being, sometimes having a boss who didn't want to do the hard work, and I'd say, oh, what are you doing there? Oh, I can do that. And so it just kept, I kept working. I never stopped. So.
Well, it's amazing. And you all talk about hard work, and obviously that's so central. You know, someone the other day, Natasha and I were doing a press interview, and someone was talking, you know, about characteristics of success. And, you know, I also hear, you know, almost all of you have mentioned luck too. And, you know, I do think that's a part of it. We were talking about the whole lean in, and how, you know, women always attribute things to luck and men don't, and that's, you know, an issue for women. But I've always felt that luck is a part of success, and it's what you make of the opportunities you're given, and being able to recognize that luck is a part of it, of who you meet and the boss that you happen to have, and embracing that is not just being honest, but it's also an essential humility to success. So I was just interested to hear all of you say that, especially given, you know, how popular that book became, and it was sort of one of those things that we were supposed to not say. I always say it because I think it's true. Well, okay, so there's so many other things I wanted to ask. So Puja, let me come back to you. You know, when we talk about the future, there's obviously MeToo has become the catchword. And, you know, it's touched every company, including our own. What I'm curious about is how you think about what images we put, you know, because everyone here in different ways is a part of controlling what people see. whether people who are already grown up or young boys and girls who are forming their sense of what gender is about and what they can achieve in life. And all of us have a role in influencing that. And it's a great responsibility. And I was wondering how you think about that, and if you do think about that.
You know, I'm interested to hear what Bernie and Nkechi of course have to say about it as well, given your roles specifically in that world. I think maybe if I can take it to a little bit of a different place. I think that it's been so incredible, I'm sure, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, I hope, to see just the amount of, and just sitting in the US, I feel that more. I'm Indian, I go back and forth, but just kind of being in New York and seeing what's happening in America, just to see the amount of activism, of conversation, of people not standing up for what they think is not right. So, you know, when, and I say this honestly, when Donald Trump won, I and my husband sat down and decided what our backup city would be. Where would we go? You know, I did not want to be, I didn't want to be standing in the line for brown people at an airport. I know I thought about that. I thought about how my daughter might be talked to. You know, she's Indian. And so I have been so encouraged and so just incredibly amazed at the spirit of this country. And, you know, despite so many systemic issues, how women are speaking up and are being given the spotlight. So that makes me very happy. I think the two things I think about for myself, which kind of goes to your question a little bit, is one, the acknowledgement for all of us as women. And it's probably true for men as well, but I will say it is certainly true for women, the issue of the confidence gap. The issue that knowing that, you know, and there's many studies, many statistics that say that a woman needs to feel 95% confident she can do a job, whatever that job may be, before she raises her hand. And for a man, it could be 65%. That's the gap. And the second thing that I think about is just unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is not just about what the person across from you is seeing about you. It's how you see yourself. You know, unconscious bias makes me, as a woman over 40, I say it proudly, I'm 47. I think ageism is a whole other issue in our business. Menopause, anyone? Oh my God. It's coming, we need to be talking about aging, women aging in this business. That's, anyway, different topic. But, you know, unconscious bias not only impacts how people think about you when you walk into a room and whether they think you're good enough and should you get that job, it impacts whether you put up your hand and whether you're putting up your hand to say, I'm not going to, no, don't like that behavior. I'm not putting up with that. And I struggle with it every day. You know, so I think what we put up with and what progress looks like really does start so much from within about how we think about ourselves. And sometimes it's amazing to hear people, and sometimes, you know, you'll meet really, you know, powerful, successful people, and I think women actually are more honest, like you just said, about acknowledging, hey, I was really nervous on that stage. I got really scared, you know? And so to know that everybody feels that way, it's not just, so know that and know that you have the power to say, just try it. Just say either no, I won't put up with it, or hey, how about I have a question, or hey, I want to go for that job. I think I can do that job even though I don't really know it. I think that will help change what goes on in front and behind eventually. So I'm answering it very differently, but just from my own perspective as a woman executive, a marketing executive who's had to kind of figure out her own way or not.
Well, I think, you know, it is, I know, slightly separate from what we're doing, and obviously a lot of people watching are younger than some of us are, but women aging in general and how that's handled, I think, is a crucial issue. And it is, I think, one of the greatest double standards that is out there. And I think it's simple things like hair color says it all.
Yes.
You know, I actually remember I was in India and they were talking about, and this was when I was younger, so it wasn't an issue for me at the time. They said, oh, the number one selling thing is hair color.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how it was a male and a female thing in India. Right. But in this country, it is a thing, right? Men, gray hair, so what? If it's good or it's
sexy.
Neutral. But for women, it is like a no-go. right? You have to get your roots done. You have to do these things or people perceive you in certain ways. And now there's this whole movement, right? People can let their hair be natural and go through that. And that's an amazing thing. But it is like these little things that, we don't necessarily think about.
And I think if I could just add to that two things, because I've had this last year of so much change and acknowledgement and acceptance. And I talk about my gray hair, not to make anybody else feel differently, but it has been traumatic to go through that process of saying, I'm going to let it go gray. It looks like shit, but it's going to be fine. But it's taken me a while to accept it and to own the power of saying, I'm going to style it well. I'm going to put on like red lipstick. I'm going to rock it. Why the hell do only men get to look sexy and lose sexuality, right? But to me, it was a lot of sexuality of thinking I don't matter anymore. I'm invisible. You just like put me on the side. So I so agree with that. And I think that's such a conversation that needs to happen. And weight and looks and like looking pretty. I mean, all of these standards just make me mad.
I do. We have different roots. I go in. Anderson is white. And... And mine, I'm like, I don't know how people did the job as a woman without these sprays 10 years ago. I'm like, you have to get your hair covered. You know what? So the guy who did my roots recently used to do Ivana Trump's roots. And she used to go in every 10 days because the Donald, she would say, did not like roots. And anyway, that was the thing. She went in every 10 days. Because he didn't like roots. So, okay. And that was blonde versus black. So, Bernadette, let me ask you, how you think MeToo has changed things. And also, when you deal with such a hit show and you deal with all the storylines you're dealing with and you're, selecting talent and dealing with all of these other issues, the darker issues of MeToo that we have seen, of course, obviously in the movie industry. How do you think about it?
Well, first of all, this is my natural color. Well, on Game of Thrones, we actually had a lot of our positions were filled by women, which I felt very fortunate to be surrounded by so many powerful women. My producer was female. My executive at HBO, Janet Graham-Borba, is female. I'm female, production designer, costume, and just so many different people there. And I think the hashtag is I think what you're saying about speaking out, I think it's empowered women to speak out more and to be braver about certain issues, whether it's sexual harassment or bullying. I feel like there's a lot of bullying in the industry sometimes by directors or producers or whatever. And that is also something that I think we need to acknowledge more, and that just because somebody's film is successful, but they're a real a-hole on the set, to me, I don't tolerate that. And David and Dan were great about supporting us when somebody was that way and talking with them or possibly never using them again. And I think that goes on a lot in the industry, that we ignore that aspect of it, because there's sexual harassment and there's bullying and there's all types of harassment. And yes, I'm not probably answering your question fully, but it has empowered all of us to speak up. I mean, I've had young girls sometimes where they go, hey, this director's asked me 3 times to have dinner with him, and I've told him I'm not interested. And I think maybe she wouldn't have said that before because she might have been embarrassed that she was getting the attention or didn't want to get him in trouble. So to me, that makes me very happy that they're able to say it, because things have gone on, obviously, in the past for both men and women. And I think it just has made everybody have a stronger voice. It's really just, to me, that's so powerful, and hopefully it continues.
Nkechi, would you say it has palpably changed what you do or how you make decisions or people around you?
I don't know that it has changed how I make decisions, but I think part of that is also just because I've sort of always operated that way. My husband and I have this conversation a lot. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I promise it applies. Because I was raised outside of the States, and I was raised in the Nigeria and the Cote d'Ivoire, I was raised somewhere where I was the majority. And so from day one, both as a person of color, where I was in the majority, and then I was also raised by probably one of the most remarkable women in the world, who I still don't know how my mom raised 4 kids on her own with like next to nothing and sent us all to British boarding schools and everything. So I've always sort of had that feeling of I can rule the world. My mom told me I could rule the world. I can rule the world. And that was sort of how I entered the industry. And I think some people sort of looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, no, trust me, like, women are amazing. And so I feel like with the MeToo movement, it feels a little bit like there's been a catching up and there's a little bit less of a battle on my side to sort of fight for getting more women in the room, or to fight for getting more women, you know, behind the camera in our directing slots, that sort of stuff. I feel like it's less of an uphill battle, but has always been one that sort of we've always fought. I've been very blessed to work for and train under other showrunners where that sort of thing was equally important to them. So that also empowered me, that once I get in the position, I'm like, I've seen Hart Hansen fight for it. I've seen Todd Harthan fight for it. So it shouldn't be any different when I'm in the position of power and able to fight for it. But I think just the general awareness, and I think it's an amazing thing that we're getting that awareness, has kind of made that battle a little bit easier as well. And also just to speak to the other part of your question that you asked in terms of how we feel like we're sort of representing that on screen. You know, I feel a great responsibility for how I not just represent all my characters on screen, but specifically are women, and it's specifically on a show like All American that is dealing with teen girls, because our teen girls go through a lot. My husband is a teacher at a high school. I get all the stories, and so I feel such a strong responsibility for how I'm representing these young women on the screen, because I watched an obscene amount of TV growing up. It's why I wanted to be in this industry, and so much of what I watched shaped what I thought prom was, what I thought interactions with boys were supposed to be, how I perceived myself at that age. And so I feel such a responsibility, again, to represent the truth of all of that for our teen girls on the screen, because I know that there are girls out there who are watching the show and judging themselves based on what they see these young girls doing. I had one of the actors on our show actually said to me in passing, and I wasn't aware that we'd done it. It was a subconscious thing. But he pointed out, he's like, do you realize, he's like, I kind of love it, but every teen girl on this show, any boys she's gotten with, it's been her choice. Like, she made the first move, she did the whole thing. And I'm like, well, I did kiss my husband first. So I said, I guess that makes sense. But it was an empowering thing of sort of, it wasn't them just sort of running around and letting boys sort of dictate, oh, he likes me, so I'm going to like him, or letting boys sort of dictate how they felt about themselves. We'd sort of subconsciously empowered these girls to be like, you know what, I like that guy, I'm going to go up and let him know, or I'm dealing with this issue and I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with my dad about it, and we weren't even aware sort of on a conscious level that we'd done that until a couple of the actors pointed it out and thought that was really exciting, and I was happy to know that, because it's something that's very important to me, that had continued to come through the work.
So Aija, how do you feel about this? You know, from your perspective, what are all of us, and in all of the different roles, missing or getting right about, you know, teen and just post-teen young women who are going to be the next generation of people who run studios and produce shows and anchor television shows and everything else in our business?
Yeah, I think there's been such an extraordinary change in the last year and a half, however long it's been. I like to listen to the people that follow me on social media and hear what they are feeling is happening or not happening. And one thing that I hear so often is I'll get a response from some of my videos that talk about a lot of this stuff through spoken word. And a lot of boys and men will reach out to me and say, I had no idea that I was a part of this culture. I had no idea that I was being sexist or misogynistic or inappropriate in whatever way. But now, hearing the way that you put it, I'm now understanding how I can change my actions. I think that on the other side, the girls that follow me will say that it's great that there is so much conversation, but is there action? Is there accountability? And I think what all of you are doing is so incredible, because my vision for what I hope the future is like is shows, movies, content that tells the real stories, like you were saying, that shows women and girls in different situations where they are putting their needs first, where they're making the first move, or girls who are faced with situations of whether it's sexual harassment or sexual assault, and in a movie or in a show, they are handling it like any girl or any woman would, with the difficult parts and the very powerful parts and all of that, because I think then I believe that the culture can be changed by media and entertainment, and then all the girls and the boys rising up in the next generation will see that, and their behavior will change from it.
It becomes their norm.
It becomes their norm, exactly. And even if culturally or familially they are not raised that way, I still believe that entertainment and media can help them make that shift.
I know we have just a few more minutes before we open up to questions, and I want to give everyone a chance to ask questions because I know people have a lot. But Bernie, I want to ask you first about just this new series that you're working on, because it sounds really interesting. So it's called The Nevers, and this is Bernadette's new series for HBO, or I don't know, now you've got a new boss. I know everything's changing around here. Okay. A science fiction drama about a group of Victorian women with unusual abilities and an important mission. So this sounds like, I'm a person who grew up, I had 2 channels on my TV. So I'm the opposite of you and Nkechi. I didn't have any television growing up, and I'm totally culturally illiterate when it comes to things. So this sounds to me like a book I would want to read, which, Bernie, I mean is the ultimate compliment. What can you tell us about this series?
Well, it's created by Joss Whedon, and it's pretty much as you described. I can't give away too much on it, but it's exciting because I know it's not based on a book. It's all coming, from Joss's brain, and he just loves powerful women. If you look at a lot of his different projects that he's done, he always has a powerful woman or two in there, and this is actually filled with several powerful women, and they each have unique powers that it's not so much superpowers, nobody's flying or anything like that, but they've been all affected by something, and he really loves the period of the Victorian time. So many things were changing and things were being invented, and women were coming a little bit into their own, and so he chose that period, and he really just loves it. And there's so many different series this year that actually are about powerful women, which is exciting. I mean, if anything, we're all worried that we'll cast people in time to without everybody stealing from each other. And so it's definitely it's something that's out there. There's several series that I was approached on that had that same theme, and I think it's really great. I'm sure it'll ebb and flow, this movement, but as Aija said, hopefully it just keeps teaching people more and more, and the more we talk about it, it just makes it so present, and that voice gets stronger and stronger by all of us. But yeah, it's going to be a great series. It's, as always, difficult, and to create something that big, because Game of Thrones, we started out nice and slow, and this one is starting off as a rocket. So,
cool.
You'll have to wait. Yeah.
All right. Well, I do want to open it up to questions. So, I think I hand it to you, right? Okay. Go ahead. So, I'm handing off.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Beth Superfin. I'm the co-chair of Turner Women in New York. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you guys for everything. This is amazing. So I've got the questions that are from the live stream. This is directly from the live stream, and many of you have liked it. Multiple people have asked it, so I'm just going to read it. What do you all think about John Stankey's non-answer to the diversity question during the town hall this week?
So can I ask a question before anyone answers this question? Is John Stankey, could he be hacked in right now and watching? Or?
I have been texting with HR. We are clear and a go to answer this.
Okay, so.
I'm happy to take that. I thought it was a fantastic question. First, just shout out to Mitra for having asked that question, because it was on, we all saw it, and I was so proud of her. I was so proud of her, and she spoke for so many, so kudos. Then I Googled her bio, which is also incredible. Oh my God, it's crazy. But what I would say is, I thought the thing I agreed with one thing that he said, and then I did not agree with one thing. I thought the thing he said that was true, because as an executive in marketing, different careers from creative, I do think what he said about having to give people the opportunity, train people, make sure that there is a strong pipeline coming in. It's not just about finding people. I hire all the time. You do not have as many people of color and women out there in the marketplace just because they were not given the opportunities 50 years ago. So that is the truth, and I know that for myself. So I agreed with him on that. I think the thing he missed saying, well, first is to acknowledge and say, you're right. And yes, this does not look great. Not today, not ever. It does not look great. I think that would have helped. The thing that I felt he could have said, which I believe is true, and I think some people call it the marzipan level or the marzipan layer, which is that layer of cake that's just kind of maybe just below the surface. The thing that I think is amazing about this company, and media is actually, I think it's much better than many other industries, where there are such strong women that are just in the level below. And they were all, Christina Miller and Jen Dorian and Bernadette from HBO, who was right in the front, Donna, Kat. I mean, there's so many of us and I think Turner has tried to do a good job. I just think they have to do a lot more. And I felt he didn't quite acknowledge. And I think saying it's gotten a lot better in the last 7 mons didn't really resonate with any of us.
Yeah, it was certainly because everybody was talking about.
Exactly.
Bernadette, since you were there, do you have any thoughts?
Not just Bernadette. I wasn't. I actually heard it from
HBO.
Somebody else.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. When you said Bernadette from HBO, I was like, well,
yes,
that's from HBO.
Yes. Sorry, my bad.
No, that's okay.
So I heard,
Go ahead,
heard about it. But I do think more has to be done, and we need to, there's barely, the unions don't have the apprenticeships that they used to, and I think we need to attract people in, because you just can't suddenly promote somebody and say, okay, there you are, and there's our person of color or a woman or whatever, and we need to help training people. We need to get them into the unions, and I know on Game of Thrones our makeup and hair gals, they actually would have their own little schools, and they would bring these people in. Now in the UK, we don't have the same unions that we have in the US, but that always bothered the hell out of me, that it was very hard for people to come in unless they knew somebody or had a family member or, all of that. And I think we need to push the unions to develop that much more. And because there's people out there that want that break, and they work hard and all of that, and we really need to open that more to train the people up, because I think some people are afraid to, and rightly so, to hire somebody who doesn't have the experience that you need. So we need to change that, and change it now,
Absolutely. I mean, to what all of you were saying, there's been a lot of conversation around, increasing the consideration set, broadening it, building pipeline, and getting that education and training in. So hopefully the momentum continues, because it has to. Okay, more from the live stream. So past the stanky question, which we have in here multiple times, what are the keys to bring men into the conversation?
Nkechi, let me start with you on that.
I think it is to just, from our perspective, so I'll talk about it from the writer's room, is to include them as part of the conversation. I think it becomes very easy to sort of form the women's group and say, okay, we have to help each other out, and here's what we need to do, and we need to make sure we're bringing more women into the pipeline and everything. But I think we need allies. We need allies that are in the majority, and the truth is, in the writer's room, it is still very much a male-dominated field. I am the first female showrunner I've worked for in my entire career. It's always been male showrunners, and they've always been in the position of power to hire. And I think we need allies. It's the same conversation I have with my writers of color all the time, not just about being writers, but just about being people of color in America. We can't alienate we need allies. and because it's something that I think makes us all stronger together, and so that we have to make them part of the conversation. And so for me, when we're sitting down and having conversations about, okay, how can we increase the female voices in the writer's room, or how can we increase the female presence behind the camera, it is something that is a conversation I'm having with my male counterparts as well as my female counterparts, because I think the only way this movement works is if we're all doing it together.
Aija, you mentioned that briefly. You had gotten a lot of feedback from men and boys.
Yes. So I've gotten a lot of positive feedback and then a lot of hate, and I've learned a lot from the hate. I think that there are a group, there's a culture that believes that female empowerment is bashing men or taking away their power, which is not the case whatsoever. So I think I completely agree with you. It's about having the conversation. It's about the education. It's about making this more visible on all levels of behind the scenes, in front of the camera, in all forms of media, so that the conversation doesn't end, that this isn't a trend, that people are not tokenized, that it really becomes the new norm. And that I think through that, it'll allow men to become greater allies, and to not feel like this movement is bashing them, when that is not the intention of the movement. And I think for the most part, it doesn't do that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I just pulled up on my phone this morning, overnight, we get these alerts. So on social media, apparently there's been some outrage about the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. So on International Women's Day, he is provoking social media outrage, is how it's written, because he says, quote, "We want to see women rise, but we don't want to see women rise only on the basis of others doing worse." So, I don't know the guy, but what he was trying to say was, it sounds like what you're trying to say, right? You don't have to say there's 10 slots, so let's just knock 6 of the guys out because we need more women. Now he's being slammed because people are like, well, look at the percentage of women in the parliament. Definitionally, some of those men have to go, and but it does seem, Puja, that there's quite a negative feedback loop, right? I mean, what she's saying, it shouldn't have to come at that. It should be an issue of Nkechi economics. It comes to the issue of making the pie bigger and not just trying to divide a small pie into more and more slices.
Yeah.
Right, but that's not always how it's seen.
And I think
from either side, there's hate coming from both sides.
And I think it's our responsibility as much to not create this divide, and not to say, well, now I'm going to be anti-men because it's all about women. Because to your point, Aija, about the tokenism, that's something I think about as well. I don't want to just support a woman because she's a woman. She needs to be a woman who's doing a great job. And so to me, I don't want to say I don't care about what gender you are, because there are differences in how we've been developed or not developed all this while, but it really is about the job and the business and the work. But that just comes back to the responsibility for companies, and that's where they need to think about the bias piece is, how do I give women the opportunity so they can be trained and so that they can stand head to head, toe to toe, foot to foot, whatever, to be able to do that job. There are just so many rooms, and even though I think of Turner as being, erstwhile Turner, as having been a really great place for a woman to shine, there are so many rooms that I'm just not part of. And I've asked, I've knocked, I've said I would love to try that out, I'd love to work on that piece. It just seems that there are those relationships that is hard to break through. So it's going to take time. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going to come. We will not gain by provoking more hatred about this. It's about showing value and business and together versus it's you versus me. Right?
And that's a great segue. Next question that got a lot of likes here. Slido is wonderful that way. Do you have advice on how to find sponsors in the workplace? Does it boil down to luck in finding a manager who sees themselves as a talent agent? Not many do.
So the one thing I would say about the sponsor, and thank you for the question, because it was an eye-opener for me, especially in, I would say more marketing, and I would say actually works in creative as well, is a sponsor is not your boss. It cannot be your boss. A sponsor has to be somebody who is at least a couple of levels above, doesn't have to be directly in line, but somebody who is more senior in the organization, kind of in your world, who can see the impact you bring, can understand your talents, and will be a spokesperson for you in rooms that you are not. So for instance, and I'll say this, and I didn't do it, I was very lucky to be at a course for Women in Power last year, at Stanford. Thanks for the company, and that's where I learned this concept. And after I came back, that was a year ago, I had always been, I enjoy meeting senior people to understand their perspective on the business. So I had already spent time with our CFO or with David or with a bunch of other people. And I think it's important to do that actively. It might feel artificial, it might feel fake, but if you go at it from the point of curiosity. It's not about I'm trying to butter you up so that you talk, but I'm truly interested in the business, Pascal. Let's talk about what you see, where you see things going. I think it's important to. Women are really not good at networking. I think women, and this is not my opinion, apparently 50% more men are likely to have sponsors than women because women just don't feel comfortable reaching out to folks they don't know. And often those folks are men in power because that's the system we're living in. So I think you have to be active about it. You need to reach out, set up time, set up coffee, breakfast, lunch, whatever. And it's curiosity. Tell me what you do. Tell me what your job is like. Tell me how you see the landscape. And eventually, they will start to see, they will see you in different places, and then they can be an advocate for you in rooms that you are not. So that's what being a sponsor means. It's not your boss. A sponsor can almost never be your boss. I mean, yes, can never be your boss. And a sponsor is different from a mentor. Sorry.
And
go ahead.
No, just to piggyback what you're saying, because she's absolutely correct. I think also in this day and age, there's a lot easier access. Like I tell people all the time, it will take me forever. I'm not going to lie. It might take me a second to respond. But send me an email. Send me a direct message on Twitter. Hit me up on Facebook Messenger. Again, it'll probably take me like a couple months to find that one. But the point is, I do go check because I understand that people are, this feels like a hard business to get into and sometimes can feel inaccessible. And so if someone reaches out in a respectful way, when the announcement was sent out about us doing this amazing intercontinental panel, I had an employee from Atlanta who reached out to me on Twitter and basically said, I read your bio and I think you're unbelievably amazing and you're doing a lot of the things I want to do. And would you ever have time to hop on the phone? I've never met this person before in my life. I know they work in the Warner family because it was based off the announcement for this. And I was like, good for you for reaching out. And I was like, absolutely. Yeah. We will find time to hop on the phone for 5 minutes. And I think, do it, reach out, because for every person you reach out to that you don't get an answer from, I promise you there are those that will appreciate that you reached out in a respectful way, will have had that done for them when they were coming up in the business, and they will respond. But you can't find those kind of sponsors and advocates if you're not reaching out. It's worth taking the risk.
Absolutely.
I think we have time for one more question, and Erin, this one is for you. What does it feel like to be tweeted at by the President of the United States?
He tweets at a lot of people. I mean, he's an equal opportunity, thrower of tweets. I think, from our perspective, he's obviously changed the game in so many ways. But I also think, and it's funny because of what you all do, I not just that he was in reality television, and that was my one reality television appearance. I did the Celebrity Apprentice for a few years, when as a judge when Ivanka was converting to Judaism. So so she was absent sometimes, so they needed someone. So what I would say is I think that there's this amazing moment that we're in, and we don't know what it means yet. And maybe some people do, or wiser than I. But I think about, Survivor, which was one of the first reality TV shows. And when I was young, MTV, whatever it was, they lived in the house together.
Real World.
Real World. Okay. So I think it started with that and MTV and music videos. And then it's just been sort of this process. And now here we are, where all of a sudden everybody has a voice, and that's a wonderful thing. But everybody has a voice, and not everybody, takes great care with how they use it. He is, in a sense, that where all of these things are coming together. The sort of ability to say whatever you want, whenever you want, to whomever you want, to be heard by everybody, to have no repercussions for what you choose to say, whether it be a hurtful, hateful thing, or whether you don't check your facts, or whatever it is. And it gets into this ether that we all now live in, and nobody really knows how to distinguish between something that is a nothing and something that is a something when it comes to facts and significance. And I think that he is the product of where we all have come. And I, as I said, someone wiser than I and history will be able to put all this together. But I think back to that real world and feel like that was the start in so many ways of where we are now. And so I think when people say, oh, Donald Trump, whether he's a one-term or a two-term president, is a unique person. Yes, he is a unique person, but we're also the world has changed, and the way that our leaders are going to interact with individual people has changed. They're not on a pedestal. They're not separate. That sort of veneer is gone. So it may not be someone that's like him, but it will be completely different. We're not going to go back to the way it was before, because the world's changed. And so, that's my view as someone in the news business. That I think what everybody here does for a living is a part of why he is where he is and behaves the way he behaves.
Well, question-wise, amazing. Thanks to all of you. And I guess I'm throwing back to Jennifer, perhaps?
I think that she had last told me we weren't doing that. I think we're done. That's okay. That's okay. But thank you guys all so much. I'm really glad that so many people came out, and what a stunning and incredible group of people. Very inspirational to be with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Board members want to come
But this should be environmentally friendly.
forward.